Hello, everybody out there. It's Tom here. How you doing? I'm all by my lonesome, but I went to see it, and it was all right. It wasn't too bad. I'm gonna talk some spoilers. I'll discuss it with you guys in the chat, I guess, since I have nobody to really discuss it on screen here, since I couldn't find anybody. But it happens. Pun intended. The movie isn't doing as well as the first film. It is looking to be opening to about $90 million, and I think the first one did an opening week of about 128 million. So this is a bit of a drop from the first film, kind of surprising. I think I have some reasons for that. One, I think they waited way too long. I think they should have done this film right after the first one. They should have filmed it back to back at the same time, like they did with the first miniseries, and they should have released it anywhere from 3 to 6 months after the first one, and it probably would have done twice as good, if you ask me. But overall, the film was decent. I still enjoy the original miniseries a little bit more for various reasons. I feel like that follows the original book just a tad better, and I'm pretty much convinced at this point these two movies are more of a remake of the miniseries than the book. Yes, there's things in the book that weren't in the original miniseries that are in these movies, but there's things that are from the original miniseries that weren't in the book that are in these movies. So to me, that kind of makes it more of a remake than a readaptation, because I'm one of those who argue there's differences between, doing a book again or remaking a complete movie. Yeah, Drew Hughes, you're correct. Bill Hader was the best part in It Chapter 2. He's one of the characters that, like I was just talking about, how just like in the miniseries, he's a comedian. Here, he's not a radio DJ like he is in the book. Now, full disclosure, it has been, pun intended again, God, at least 20 or better years since I've read the book. So you'll have to excuse me that I'm real rusty on my memories of that. But overall, I did enjoy the film. I liked it better, actually, in a lot of ways than I did the first part. Now, the first part, I enjoyed the cast I enjoyed the kids. I didn't think Pennywise was as good as Tim Curry. I didn't like how he didn't have kind of two sides to him like Curry did, because at least in the original miniseries, and I talked about this, and you can check out my interview with Tommy Lee Wallace on the main channel. We talk a little bit about the new one, and of course, he directed the miniseries of it back in 1990. And I mentioned to him, it's like, at least with Tim Curry's version, you can understand why a child would get close to that clown, because he still looks and acts like a clown until he turns on the children. In this version of Pennywise is scary from the start, and that's the best part of the original movie's Blu-ray, is where they have that little outtake where the kid's like, nope, and walks the hell off the screen when he first sees the clown. It's like, that's really, really what a kid would do after they saw this Pennywise. But Jess Reed, $1.99. If you ain't in to me, you got issues. Well, thank you, Jess Reed. I appreciate that so much. Flopping has been, chapter 1 had more hype in comparison. And that's where I'm saying I think they should have gotten this movie out sooner. I'm not exactly sure why they decided to wait so long. Because they've been trying to make this movie now for over a decade. And at all points, it was meant to be at least 2 parts. I know that. And as far as I know, they had originally always planned on filming it back to back. But I think just like when ABC got cold feet back in the day when it came to the miniseries, because the original miniseries was gonna be like I want to say it was like 7 or 8 parts or something like that, and then they cut it down over time, and then eventually it just became the 2-part miniseries that it was. I think the same kind of thing happened here with Warner Brothers. They got a little cold feet and they wanted to see how the first film was going to do before they committed to a second. And that's a possibility. The only thing that's a downfall of that is, like I said, there's been too much time in between the 2 movies. It's been 2 years. The kids, when they brought them back for reshoots, they're obviously older than they were in the first film. Not too bad. They may have used some CGI to young them down a little bit. That's possible. But you can tell like the kid who plays Bill is definitely like probably a foot taller in this movie than he was in the first film. And the kid who played Georgie looks nothing like he did in the first movie. I don't think they got a different actor. I'm pretty sure it's the same actor, but the kid's grown so much since then that, yeah. And overall, though, I did enjoy the film. Like I said, there's some things I had some problems with. My problems with it are the same issues I had with the first film. You can always check out my retrospective review of the miniseries and the first movie right here on After Dark, I believe it is. That one is. And then I said the same thing. You have the problem in the first movie is if you had not seen the original miniseries or read the book, there's a lot of payoff with no setup to it. So you don't know exactly what's going on in certain aspects or certain things mean. Like, example, beep, beep, Richie. They don't really set that up in the first movie, and they say it once, the clown does near the end, and it doesn't really have any meaning. And they use it here in its proper context in the film, but it's not really set up. So unless you kind of know that that's what the kids say to Richie to get him to shut the hell up, then you don't really get it per se. And the same thing, I felt like the blood in Beverly's bathroom wasn't really well explained in the newer version, and it was done much better in the original version. Now, don't get me wrong. The original miniseries has tons of corny stuff in it. It was made in 1990, and it feels like it, and it feels like it was a made-for-TV movie. But it's arguably one of the best miniseries ever, and this had a tall order to live up to. And I know some people are going to disagree with me. I actually think that Chapter 2 accomplished more so what the filmmakers probably were setting out to do than the first chapter did, because the first chapter had a lot to live up to with the miniseries, and this time they were able to kind of go in some different directions. That's one thing, I guess, that I will give it praise for. I did like Pennywise a little bit better in this movie. There's a moment where a girl's like, "Fuck you, I'm not coming close to you because you're ugly as shit." So it's like, it makes more sense because she's like scared of him, but he like comes up with a little deal. He's like, "Oh, I should have never showed my face." Manchurian. Yeah, I wanted or Manchurian, however you say it. I was hoping, considering they had a lot of little nods to turtles in the first movie, that we'd get him in this movie, or it is another version of it, kind of. For those of you who may not know what Manchurian, or however you say it is, it's kind of he's a turtle who has a lot of who helps the kids, and he's kind of like a good it in a way. Interesting shape shifting by Pennywise. There was some good things. I'm not a big fan of the CGI Pennywise stuff, though. There was some cool bits, though. Like, I will say that the spider at the end was a huge improvement over the miniseries version. I like how they had the torso, and how he was still kind of the clown, but yet the big spider. I do like the ending much better in this film than the original miniseries. It's fairly similar in certain ways and aspects, but I like how they get the idea that if they convince it to think things like it convinces them, that they should be able to take it down and make him small and insignificant and kill him. Yeah, the granny bit was a bit creepy. Let me see here. Let me think about what else was there that I really liked in the movie. I liked the bit with the kid that they added with Bill. I'm trying to remember if in the book, if he really was sick or not, and if he had any guilt like he did in this movie. But I know I seen an interview where what's his face was saying to the director and writer that he wanted to beef up Bill's part a little bit, give him something extra. So they gave him this bit with the kid. I felt sorry for the kid, poor kid, because he's in 2 scenes before he gets killed, and each time you're just like, this poor kid, he just keeps getting attacked by adults, basically, like verbally, because you have the great scene in the Chinese restaurant early on when Richie thinks that the kid's it, and he starts yelling at him and shit, and then Bill runs into him later on because he actually lives in Bill's house, and he's like, stay away from the this, that, and the other, and it's like, it's like this poor kid just keeps getting yelled at by adults. It's kind of funny. Anyhow, sorry, I had to cough there a second. But yeah, any questions you guys got in the chat? Because I'm not sure where to go here from there. I mean, overall, it could have been a lot worse. That's the thing is I thought they were going to get a little bit more into Pennywise's origin. They don't, because I remember like in the book, there's like a whole chapter or two that's from his point of view that gets into his past. They kind of give you like a little bit of a pause The Godfather to hear me. Wow. You should probably just watch The Godfather. It's a great movie, and just come back to me, Jess. But I appreciate your patronage here. The Stephen King cameo, yeah, that was good. The ending of the book sucking. Well, not just in this, but that's been a common thing for years with Stephen King. Is everybody's always said that, yeah, his books are great, but his endings suck. So I know that was a definite little poke or jab to Stephen King, or homage, however you want to put it. Let me see here. Let me go back up. Maybe you guys said a few things I missed. Well, hello, Caesar Rivas and Drew Hughes and everybody who said hello to me. Sorry, I didn't see those right away. But yeah, Max Mercer, welcome to the chat. Robert Pearson, if you're still hanging around, Flopping has been. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm surprised there's actually 33 of you guys listening to me ramble on about this movie. But yeah, there was some jump scares I didn't really like. I'm sick of the jump scare crap. They don't really scare me. I see him coming a mile away usually. The one jump scare that really wasn't a jump scare but was funny as shit is they have the whole door set up again with the scary, not so scary, scary as hell deal or whatever, like they did. I think it was in the first movie too. And they're like, we're not falling for this shit again. And they open the one door and it's scary and whatever. And then they go to the other one. There's this little puppy, and that bit was hilarious. There's some laugh out loud moments in this movie, and some people, and hello, Dr. Coffin Nails, and some people may not like that. They might be like the Marvel thing in a few other places where it's like misplaced humor, but I thought the jokes landed pretty well. Turtle is not really in the movie, Max. They, as I was saying before, they have homages to turtles all throughout, just like they did in the first movie, but they set up the ritual through see, the weird thing was I complained that Mike, is that the name? Yeah, Mike. They took all his character and took all the bits that he had in the first part and gave them to Ben for some reason. And then here he's given a little bit more to do, though, at least, so they kind of make up for that. And he's the one who finds out about the ritual, and they give him a lot more in this. Yeah, there was a nod to the thing. Yes, there was. There's a lot of little nods to other things. I mean, I did enjoy this film overall a lot more than I did the first film. And I did enjoy the first film too, but I still just give the miniseries an edge for certain things. And a big part of it is Tim Curry, don't get me wrong, because he was able to do, in my opinion, a lot more with a lot more restriction, no help from CGI, and really capture that character. Now, Bill Skarsgård, who plays Pennywise in these two films, he kind of won me over a little bit more in this film than he did the first movie. But I think that's because I would love to get Jeff on here. I messaged him a few times. I think he's been busy. I couldn't get anybody. Dr. Coffin-Nails, who said world class bullshitters like the first film more. I understand people will. A lot of people will. Let's see here. Doomed, huh? I thought chapter 2 was boring. The same plot, same resolution as the first long. Well, that's the problem this movie has, Doomed. That's what Tommy Lee Wallace complained about when I directed, or when I talked to the director of the miniseries. That's who did that. He said the same thing. The problem with the second movie is it's the same story, and in the book they're being told simultaneously, and the miniseries was the ones who split that up, and that's the problem, and that's the same problem we have here. Is since they didn't tell the story simultaneously, you have that separation, so you're going to go through deja vu instead of actually seeing things kind of bounce off each other like they did in the book. And that's my biggest complaint to this whole thing. This should have been a trilogy instead of 2 movies, and it should have been told simultaneously over the 3 films, and we should have seen the story play out a little bit closer to the way it is in the book. Other than that, yeah, it does take in some cases, I would say probably too many homages from other films. And hi, Mecca, welcome to the chat. I know you didn't get to see this one yet. Um, I, I don't know if you'll like this one or not, Mecca. I'm not sure. I can't remember if you really cared for the first one all that much. But overall, I mean, I guess It Chapter 2 does succeed in accomplishing probably what they tried to do with it until like 20, 30 years down the road when we get another version that may be a little bit more faithful to the book. I mean, again, you take the two versions and you really get a good sense of what the book's about. And I mean, I even said to Tommy Lee Wallace, I don't know if it made it into the interview, but I told him he did a really good job, much like how I compared it to Jaws, and that's probably why I cut it out because I didn't want anybody freaking out on me. But I do still feel that way, that they were able to take that story and distill it down to what it needed to be and worked on screen and not what worked on the page necessarily, kind of like how Jaws did for Steven Spielberg. And I stand by that comparison, even though I know the movies are two completely different worlds. Don't get me wrong, so nobody eat me up on that one, please. But what did I think of the opening scene in the film? Okay, I did talk to Mecca about this before, actually, speaking of, since she's here. I didn't mind the scene so much as it just feels out of place because it's 2016. And in the book, it's 1985, if I remember correctly. And in 1985, that would be a more believable thing. And the problem is they also don't really leave any connection in the movie like they do in the book, to where there's a lot going on, and the two drunk idiots who are the ones who actually are harassing the gay guys in the book, as opposed to the movie, it's a group of kids, probably supposed to be more reminiscent of the Bowers gang kind of thing. But in the movie, they get convicted and thrown in jail and shit for the whole thing. I thought that's what they're going to do, is kind of have this thing play out throughout the movie in the background, and they just left it alone. They didn't even come back to it again. The only thing that connects to that opening scene is the little girl. And so really, I'm kind of confused as to why this is in the movie. So I can understand where some people are coming from. I don't understand completely, though, otherwise. I mean, I think the characters were handled well. I mean, I don't understand if anybody's complaining about how the gay characters were handled or anything like that. I haven't heard too much of the complaints. I tried to avoid anything before I went to the movie, but seems like Jonathan's piano does not care about spoilers, hasn't seen the film, but anyone can describe the opening scene. Heard some have problems with. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what the problems with it were, other than it just, I'm not so sure I could see something like that necessarily happening in the open without anybody saying anything in this day and age, but it's happening in Derry. I guess that's the only thing you could chalk it up to. Now, to go back to what I said before, hey, Blake Phoenix 77, welcome, and Mark Fields, Joshua Nystrand, I see you popped in here too. If I missed anybody, sorry, but yeah, and to go back to what I was saying before in the beginning about how there's a lot of payoff and no setup. That's another thing that the director has said, that he's going to do like an extended version, so maybe that'll fix a lot of this problem, but it should have been fixed in the first place. Because I feel sorry for anybody who hasn't seen the original miniseries or is familiar with the book, because there's a lot of things I feel like you're going to miss, and you may be lost in a lot of this. Let's see. The Jonathan Piano said the problem I read from one critic was that it was a horrible homophobic thing, and that it served no narrative purpose and wasn't revisited. That's true. That's very true. Unfortunately, that is very true. The only tie it has is the little girl, and unless in the extended version there's more to it, then I still wonder why it's in this version. They're not wrong. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it in this case. Because there is another gay character in the movie, and they didn't even tie it in that way. I guess spoilers: Richie's gay, so and they don't even throw it in your face. That was done in a way that I felt Hollywood shouldn't take note, because it was done correctly. It was done in a way that wasn't toting it. It wasn't out there grandstanding upon it. You have one scene where Pennywise kind of gets in this thing, and you get an idea. He's like, I know your secret. I know your secret. And then they have another scene where you kind of get an idea, well, maybe he is gay. And at the end of the movie, you're pretty sure, because it bounces back, and you could tell that he's always had a thing for Eddie. So yeah, that was a way I thought that was done tastefully. But the beginning, I can see where people are having issues with it to a point. Other than that, let's see here. You guys are finally popping in here now. Trying to keep up with the messages now. Let's see here. The thing is, I stop to read the messages and then I have to stop to talk. Maybe I should bring Mecca in just to help me talk while I go through the messages. She's not busy. Let's see here. For me, it did serve a purpose because every time Pennywise always awakens, it's something horrible happens, like a hate crime. Yeah, and here's the thing: is like I wonder. I'm sure there'll probably be more to it in the extended versions if they get to them. And yeah, Black Phoenix, the gay murder thing. Like I said before, you probably missed it when they come in. It's in the book. It's a little different, but it also plays like in the background of. They even get into the whole like court case, and they end up going to jail and getting blamed for the murder. I mean, even though they probably shouldn't have been persecuted for what they did in the first place, but regardless, that's the whole thing. And it's like this whole, okay, I'll send you a link here, Mecca. They, send out, I forgot my train of thought because I'm doing 3 things at once. I can only do 2. All right, Mecca, I send you the link there. So if you could pop it and maybe help me keep this rolling. I'm trying to do the best I can. All murders are hate crimes. Yeah. That's true. I didn't know that, man. Heck, I'm just here. Oh, okay. Let's see here. What else we got, guys? Hey, Mecca. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, I was like, okay, I kind of want to see it out of obligation, but I don't know if I want to sit through it. And
it's pretty good. It didn't feel like 3 hours.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know. It's not that it's going to feel like it. It's like, I don't know if I can take time away from, you know, like doing my stuff that I want to get done. Because, like, do you know how time is? I don't have 4 hours to watch, to finish up The Dark Crystal.
Right. Well, I got lucky and got snuck into it, so I didn't technically pay for it. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't, you know.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my issue with a lot of these movies is that they make them so long, and by the time you go to the theater, it's such a hassle because you know you got like the last one. I think my experience in the theater in the last one is kind of making me be like, you know, I can just wait. I'll watch it, and then I can watch it like in chunks. You know, like I can get up and you know if I need to Jalosia or something, I can pause it, and that's kind of where we're at. It's the theater experience for a lot of this thing, especially horror movies. Like if you're in a kind of an area where you know you're going to get a crowd who's going to be loud and obnoxious during a horror movie, I wouldn't go, right? Like I didn't realize that the crowd when I saw Halloween was going to be so bad. Here, I think it might be a little better. Maybe if I see it on an afternoon and a matinee or something, maybe I'll do that. But
yeah,
I don't know. Or if I just wait until it's out on video in like a month. And
I'm actually, I would wish there was more to it. Like I said, there's a lot of the payoff and no setup again with this movie, like the first one, unfortunately, where there's things like, and they cut out Audra altogether. His wife, Bill's wife. Bill's wife in the book and in the movie, in the first movie, she's a big part of the second part of the story. She's cut out completely in this version. Robert Pearson wants to know what the spider is like. It was better in this version than the miniseries, obviously. Like I said, I liked how they had Pennywise kind of like the top part of the torso, and they had the spider kind of thing, and he had like these jabby hook things. He kept going after the kids, the guys. I kept calling them kids, but they're men and women. A woman now, but yeah.
I think with this movie, for me, my biggest problem with Stephen King, like, is a lot of the time it's the source material. Like, it's so. You know, Stephen King is perfect for like a cinematic universe because all of this stuff is so interconnected, but you really have to be a huge fan of it to for somebody like me. I can kind of take or leave his stuff. You know, I really have to be in the mood for it, and I don't know. I think I'm still on the fence on this one, but you know, I probably will enjoy it when I finally see it. But I don't think I'm going to see it in the theater.
It wouldn't hurt you to wait for a video or Netflix. Yeah. I mean, it's not. I mean, you kind of already know the story. That's why I wasn't too worried about doing a spoiler thing, because outside of the shit they changed, there's really nothing to spoil because the story's pretty much the same as the first time around. The only difference is this time they have the ritual, which as somebody brought up in the chat here just a little bit again. And yeah, outside of leaving out Turtle, the ritual is all still there. And that's how they add a little bit to Mike's character that way, even though they took so much away from him in the first movie, which I thought was stupid. I don't understand that still to this day. They flip-flopped in the first movie. I don't know if you remember because you said it's been so long, probably not. But in the first movie, they kind of flip-flopped the characters of Mike and Ben, the fat kid.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, because like, yeah. So, and unfortunately, they took a bunch of shit away from the black kid, basically, in the first movie.
Oh yeah, because I remember like really. He was like the one of the better ones on when they were adults, right?
Well, that's the thing is he was the one who was the historian. He was into
Yeah,
the
he was like the
town, and he
main
was the
guy
one
in
who
the.
stayed around. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like the main character. I kind of remember him, and I remember a little bit of like Harry Anderson, and I remember, of course, John Ritter in the miniseries. Like, it's been such a long time since I've seen the miniseries too.
Right, and that's why I say this is more of a remake of the miniseries. For the one of the specific reasons is Richie's still a comedian.
Okay.
In the book, he's a radio DJ.
Okay.
In this version, it's Bill Hader's a comedian, just like the Harry Anderson character was. So that's a direct lift from that. But they do a great job. I mean, Bill Hader's the best part of this.
That's what I keep hearing. You know, he's pretty likable in pretty much everything I've seen him in. I keep hearing he's pretty decent. Like all the other reviews, like I've watched a few reviews. I watched Angry Joe's and I watched like the sibling rivalry one that they did on Nostalgia Critic, and they're saying it's like kind of pretty much everybody I've watched has said it's unintentionally funny. Bill Hader's the best part, and there's some weird like pacing issues with, like they don't let something be scary. They just kind of cut away to it's funny now.
Yeah, there's some there. Like I said, the jokes landed for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see some people being, oh, that's poorly timed joke.
Yeah.
You know, like the best joke though is, like I said, they get up to the doors again, and he opens the door, and there's this little itty bitty Pomeranian puppy there, and he's like, oh no, I'm not falling for this shit again. And then they go to the other doors and like, all right, let's take the puppy, and they go back to the puppy, and you know there's gonna be a jump scare at some point, and it's played really well for laughs. That's one of the few times one of the jump scares pays off. Otherwise, the jump scares in this movie are just like every other horror movie. You see them coming a mile away.
I hate jump scares. I just hate jump scares. I'm tired of them. You don't need them anymore. Give me suspense. Give me something creepy. Or
no, the scene with the old lady was creepy. It was well paced. It was well done, and you got the little bits. You've seen all that in the trailer, pretty much.
And that's the other thing I'm hearing is that like all the good stuff they put in the trailer. And for me, that scene didn't really work for me because I'm like, and she's gonna be creepy, and it's weird, you know, and like I kind of want to just fast forward through it and get it over with because I know it's coming. Maybe I've just seen too many horror movies.
Well, at least they don't have the animal deaths in the movies like they do in the book. I'll give you that one. Because there's one character, and I was afraid they were going to have it in the first movie, where they actually poison one of the character's dogs in the first book. And they get it. So they left a lot of that kind of stuff out, at least.
That's kind of my thing. Is like, okay, does it have animal deaths? Because I can watch people getting hacked up all day usually. I mean, but it has to be funny. That's kind of my condition. I think modern horror for me isn't funny anymore, and it's not ridiculous. Because like I can watch, you know, Freddy Krueger pull a chick through a TV, right? That's funny. That's a stupid, ridiculous, funny death. It doesn't make me cringe, and it doesn't make me feel disturbed and disgusted, and I don't like seeing I don't enjoy seeing people murdered when I can like sympathize with, okay, they're being tortured, this is actual brute. I don't like torture porn. I don't find any of that enjoyable to watch. So there's kind of like a fine line for me with horror. That's why I'm like less of a fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre style and more a fan of like Freddy and Jason sort of horror.
You're kind of like me. You'd rather watch Texas Chainsaw 2 than part 1 because part 2 is fun.
Yes. Yeah.
Brutal. It's tough to watch. And you might actually enjoy this movie. This has a lot of callbacks to 80s horror.
All right.
In a lot of ways.
That's what I keep hearing. And it's just for me, it's like I don't want to sit in the theater and watch.
No, you probably won't have to at this point. It's not going to do as well as the first film. I think it's going to get forgotten until it comes out on video, and we get an extended edition that actually fills in the blanks that we have here. Because that's kind of what I felt like. I just felt it was good, but it kind of feels like when you get a meal, but you're like, maybe I should have got an appetizer because I'm not full. Yeah. You know what I mean? It feels like it's missing something.
Okay. I can see that from like a lot of the reviews I've heard, that it's like, yes, it's not nearly as good as the first. And
I actually liked it better than the first.
Right.
But
I can see that. Well, because if your taste is more, because like you're like me, you like the 80s horror slasher stuff, you like the fun stuff. So
well, my problem with the first movie wasn't so much, it was just the story, because I loved the kids. The kids were perfectly cast.
Yeah.
It was the fact that they left so much out. And then this one, it feels like they're trying to cram so much in, but yet there's still stuff that needed to be addressed that isn't. Like, I mean, I had my own questions, and I know the story.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, so it's like,
well, they need to put, if it's important, if it's something where you have to go and read the book, then you're not doing your job as a filmmaker. You know, if it's something like that, you need to definitely put everything in the movie that I need to know if I'm only watching the movie. You got to treat your audience like this is all we're watching. This universe is these two movies.
Right. And that's where I will say the original miniseries still, in my opinion, does a much better job of distilling the story down to its basics and telling us a coherent, well done story, and captures the essence of what it was supposed to be. This movie just felt like it was trying to recapture both of these movies together. Felt like they were trying to recapture that magic that the first miniseries had, but then just twist everything to that dark CGI jerky horror style. You know what I mean? And then that's really kind of where we get a lot of the I felt this movie wasn't as dark as the first one, actually. There's a lot more in the light in this one. You can actually see things, I feel like, a little bit better. It's almost like they did hear some of our complaints about the first movie. And they did address them a little bit in this movie. So I give them credit for that. I do feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities because in the original book, there was the Dracula bit and they did Wolfman in the miniseries and stuff like that because that's what the kids were seeing that summer was the re-release of the Universal horror movies or whatever in 58 or whatever it was, or when the book takes place and stuff. I thought they had a missed opportunity because they had Nightmare on Elm Street 5 playing and stuff like that in the theater in the first movie. It's like they're Warner Brothers. They have the rights to Freddy and Jason. They could have had both of them in these movies.
Right.
You could have had Robert Englund come in and do a little cameo, and
well, we had Chucky and Godzilla in what was it? And I think Freddy was in that too in Ready Player One.
Yes. And I mean, I thought that was kind of yeah, sure, I get Dracula's too old now, but since the kids were in the 80s, have it be Freddy and Jason.
Yeah. Well, of course, Freddy and Jason weren't really scary for kids. I mean, Freddy was the talking Freddy doll outraged parents, but kids loved it, and that's why I have it.
Right? Well, everybody loves Freddy.
Yeah, that was the thing. They were horror movies, but they were for kids. So, are they trying to go back with that? I wonder. Are they going back to horror movies, or now kind of well, yeah, it's R-rated, but take your kids to it because
I can see. Here's the thing: it is accessible to kids, and then. But the problem with it is it deals with a lot of adult. The whole point of it, if you look at the book in its simplicity, is an entire kind of it's kids dealing with adult situations and becoming adults before their time. That's really the whole allegory of the story. And that's where that whole sex bit comes in, where the kids all have sex when they're kids. Yeah. It's King being coked up and not really knowing how to tell an allegorical story real well at that time.
Exactly. But and I think that's another problem that I have with it and with a lot of Stephen King stuff is it's just a little too much, a little too weird, a little too many tangents, a little too much. It's almost a little too much world building. I don't know if I need every little character to have a big backstory and. I don't know. It's just weird. I think I'm just not the biggest Stephen King fan personally, but I don't know.
Okay, I'm not sure what Robert Mort or who.
I know. I'm looking. Hypocritically, it was. I'm seeing this. Hypocritical is what it is, and needs an explanation. You got any? Because we can put all the pieces together here. I don't know what he's talking about.
You guys can expose the hidden parts of a film. They damn well uploaded their video.
You guys easily pay such disrespect.
Oh, I didn't even know Red Letter did. I haven't got to see theirs yet.
Dealing with the exact same subject.
Oh, I didn't even know.
Channels.
Sorry, I didn't even know they did.
What are we talking about? What did they do?
I guess Red Letter Media just uploaded those.
Those what?
Their video of it. Oh, go watch it, I guess.
I mean, everybody's covering it. How is this?
I don't know what his issue is. So okay, sorry.
I mean, we're also streaming on top of Mahler, so
yeah, that's one of the reasons why I was thinking about not doing it is because he's going right now. But I'm like, whatever. I mean, I didn't plan on talking about it for too long.
No, I mean, and you're kind of in an era where, I mean, Angry Joe and everybody put theirs up on Thursday, everybody else put their reviews of it up on Thursday. So,
and I was gonna go see it Thursday, but I had so much shit going on, and I just didn't do it, and I didn't feel like dealing with all the people like you. I have the same issue with the opening weekend and dealing with all the asshats in the theater, and I had to move a theater this time too. You know how it typically works for me, right?
Yeah.
Guess what the problem was this time? They had all the voices coming out of the left channel, so you feel like.
Oh, I hate that.
it had like everything was like twisted sound wise. So I was like, I can't sit through this. So I ended up going to the next showing. So I was like, oh balls, I ain't dealing with that. Well, I'm just glad I didn't pay for it. You know, that's the last two movies I went to. I haven't had to pay for. So.
Yeah, Road Warrior, any Dario Argento fans, absolutely.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Love his stuff.
Hey.
Like, I can sit there and watch Phenomena and Suspiria all day. Yeah. Like, those are just good watches for me.
And not only that, he's very influential. But Proper Jeremy, you did see the movie along with me. How are you doing?
Oh, hey, hello. How are you doing?
Hanging in there, sir. What did you think of the film? What did you think of the first film first, and then tell us what you thought of this one?
Well, the first film, I actually didn't see it until a few days ago. I never really, I just figured that because I heard that there was a chapter 2, I'm just like, because I'm not attached yet. Why not wait so I can like binge it and just watch it as a whole, kind of like how it's intended. But the first part, I really enjoyed. I loved all the child actors were fantastic. I remember watching the first It that came in 1990 and really just gravitating more towards the kids than I did the adults for one reason or another. And the same thing is here, but only because it's totally different when you have kids in peril than adults. You know, plus you've seen them succeed before. So and also I kind of know what happens, but what they were able to do is just deliver in a way that didn't seem cheesy and it didn't seem rushed. It seemed very well paced, and it was in a way that because it was set in the 80s instead of the 50s, you had a lot of that nostalgia that people will tend to remember a little bit more, and they did things in different ways that I appreciated. But I thought it was an overall great film. I wasn't scared all that much, but I liked. I can see where people would be frightened, and I think they did it in a way that wasn't just jump scares the whole time, which I liked.
Yeah, there wasn't nearly as many jump scares, I think, in this one as the first one. There was a few, but like I think I said to Mecca earlier, it's not nearly as bad. This one felt a little bit more like a callback to like an 80s horror film. Yeah, like an 80s, 90s horror film.
Yeah, and it still was able to, well, and now I'm talking more about the second film. I just I didn't have any complaints at all. It just maybe and it also didn't feel like it was 3 hours long. Did it feel like that to either of you?
No, I said the same thing to Mecca a little bit ago. It's like that's the beauty, at least, of it, is that it doesn't feel that long. In fact, I feel like there's things missing from it, and I'm more curious to see the extended editions that the director had talked about releasing at some point here.
Oh, he did. Oh, so because
like I said, I feel like there's a lot of context missing from certain aspects, and I brought a few of those things up, being like the blood in the sink. I thought was explained better in the miniseries than it was here, and I felt like they missed a lot of things that they could have dove into a little bit better that they didn't, that have payoffs but no setup, especially stupid little things like beep beep Richie. Like that's what the kids always used to say, to tell him to shut the fuck up, but you don't really know that unless you've read the book or seen the miniseries. So
yeah, and that was the same mistake that was in the miniseries. The miniseries, they just Pennywise just says that to the adult Richie, never really said that to.
Well, they do say it.
Well, they do it a little bit.
Kids. Yeah, the kids say it to him a couple times, so at least they kind of set that up, and they do set up the blood a little bit better, to where they explains to where she's like, she cleaned it up several times by herself, and it wouldn't stay clean until they all cleaned it together.
Yeah, and that was the point. And that was the point of that was supposed to indicate to you that we all have to be together in order to defeat this thing. That was the spark, and I get that. And I think a lot of this movie does sort of depend on you knowing about the book or being familiar with the miniseries. If you just went into it blind, you might be a bit confused at some points.
You might be able to figure it out unless somebody tells you. I don't know. Is anybody looking?
I wouldn't go to this if you hadn't seen the first one, though, right?
No, definitely.
No.
You can't go into this blind without seeing the first film, at least. Yeah. But I mean, it does help, like
material, right? Like like the book and the miniseries. And
that's the problem, is you almost have to know certain aspects of these characters to kind of get what's going on without being like, wait, what? Because I can see people having those moments if they're like totally going to this blind.
Mhm.
Like if just seeing the first movie and not knowing anything about the story other than it's got a killer clown in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're going into it like that, you're going to be kind of lost on some of these character traits, what's exactly going on between them, and you'll be like, this is kind of a weird moment. I don't understand what they're doing or why that's a relevant thing. Like they didn't do a real good job. Did kind of. I think they set up the placebo thing in the first movie, didn't they, Jeremy?
Yes.
I couldn't
yes,
remember
they
or
did.
not.
They said it directly. When he
Okay,
was-
yeah.
Yeah, I think somebody at the counter told him.
Yeah, the girl tells him it's just a
Yes.
placebo, and he's like, "What's that?"
Yeah. And yeah, he thought it was something else or something.
Because
But
they did a good job calling that back in the second film. Then that I thought, that's
yeah.
the kind of thing that these films don't have enough of, is the connective tissues to that should be there that aren't there, because I think they had just assumed the audience already kind of knows this. That's
and wasn't this intended to be 2 parts initially to begin with?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
if you had that opportunity, why not use that to your advantage? You know, filming sequels back to back can serve very well.
Mhm.
Back to the Future Part 2 and 3, had a lot of
Exactly.
connective tissue there, and it worked out very well because they planned it meticulously.
Well,
And-
even nowadays, that's just the way they do these things. Like the last few Avengers movies were basically filmed back to back and stuff like that, and
Oh,
they do
yeah.
a lot of this stuff. And Lord of the Rings, for example, too. And I brought this up earlier on, and that was their initial plan for years, was to film these back to back. I'm like, why didn't they? And when I talked to the director of the original miniseries, I was like, he said the same thing. He's like, that's stupid. Why didn't they film them together? That makes no sense. You're going to do it. He's like, I don't understand that. And the only thing I
what
could
did
think of
they-
is Warner just got cold feet, is the only thing I could think of.
What they've just got, they got a little chicken or something. They were like, well, we don't know if the audience is gonna like this first
Yeah,
part.
I think that the first movie really, really took them by surprise. Now, I know they expected it to be like, a hit, but not like a mega hit like it was. That's where I think they really miscalculated, because any other time when they do these things, and Mecca knows what I'm talking about too, whenever they plan these things anymore, they're planning 3-4 movies out. They've got people signed, they've got the stories already they're teasing them already in the end of the first movie and the credits before the first movie's even out in theaters, before they even know it's going to be a hit. They're already teasing a sequel, So they already kind of know this shit anymore. Like, they plan these things ahead of time, and why they didn't in this instance is the only thing I can see is that because it's a horror franchise, and Stephen King, actually for a long time, he hadn't had a movie that was a huge hit, like based on his material. So I can see where they would have been a little bit leery. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, and it's hard to adapt something like it and do it justice in the way that it was intended in the book, but also brings something a little bit different, something that people haven't seen before. Incorporating some elements in it that wasn't necessarily in the miniseries, and trying to cut out some of like the goofy stuff that didn't really seem to work or wasn't quite scary, if you will, and try to do something new with that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There were not that many Stephen King films that I can really recall, maybe on one hand, that were particularly well received or were financially successful and critically successful. The Shining was a great example. Stand By Me was a great example, but it's not really known as a Stephen King adaptation.
Yeah, but again, you got to go
you
either got to go back to the 80s or to things like The Green Mile or Shawshank Redemption that aren't his horror stuff. Yeah. That's the problem.
I think that's the thing with Stephen King for me, is like, I like the ones that have as little to do with King as possible. Like the Shining is really, really good. Or
I will say Maximum Overdrive was a classic.
The
The best soundtrack ever. I will put it that way, but that is my own bias, and I admit that. Stephen King done right.
He directed it and wrote it.
Oh yeah. But no, I see your point. When they have little to do with, Stephen King. Well, he was in. Well, I don't know if this is a spoiler at all.
Spoiler. We've been spoiler.
Okay, cool. Yeah, he was in the movie as the one of the. He was talking to Bill. I think,
and that was another. There you go. There's another reason why I don't understand why they cut Audra's character out and made Silver such a big deal in that scene, and then it never really pays off.
Yeah, and Audra wasn't in the movie really.
Yeah,
at
she
all.
was in one scene.
Yeah. Yeah, she did not matter. Nobody's spouses, if there were like any that you could indicate, mattered at all. which is, you know, a plus and minus, I guess. Audra was important in the book. She was important in the miniseries, but I guess they wanted to focus on strictly just the main characters, like the kids that are adults now. And that, I mean, for better or worse, I think it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, they, at least in this version, like in the miniseries, they just kind of cut to the middleman with Eddie and just had him still live with his mom. You know, in this version, they actually had it like it is in the book. He marries a woman who's just like his mother, but it doesn't really pay off anywhere. It doesn't really, you know, and that was the other thing I was kind of like weird. They didn't have like a funeral for Eddie or anything like that either. It's just like,
or Stan, for that matter.
Well, Stan had his thing go. Hey, I'll give them credit. They gave Stan more in this movie than they did in the book. I like how they ended the movie with his letter, because I don't remember that from the book.
I didn't read the book.
I'm pretty sure that's not in the book. And I like how they ended the movie with his little letter, and how he felt that the only way they would win is by taking himself off the table. And because he knew if he was there, he would end up screwing up and getting them all killed. So at least they gave him a purpose, because in the book and in the original miniseries, he just kills himself because he just don't want to face it.
Yeah, and it sort of seemed like it didn't feel right. And no, in the miniseries as well, he just, like, the adult Stan was like not in it at all. He was non-existent.
Really.
And that made me think, like, what was the character's purpose at all? You know, like, why is he there? You know, and now they actually do something with him, which is
yeah. The book
I was not aware that it was.
I remember he's in the book, but it's like he's really short.
No, the letter.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not. I don't remember that in the book, because the ending of the book is way different. Like, it has the Audra scene. I think is the end of the book, pretty close to it. If not, that's not the end. If it's pretty close to it, like that's all in. That should have been in there. I don't know why they left that out in this movie, other than timing. But
yeah,
again, here you have a situation where I think this should have been a trilogy. I really do. I really think they should have just told the story simultaneously, to where you don't feel like
they did in the Macy. Yeah, probably. So then, because like for me, I never liked it when it was the adults anyway, because it's pretty much the exact same thing that happens when they're kids. They go and defeat the clown again. It's like, why would I go and see this? I already know how it ends. I think, like, if you're like a cynical movie going audience, I'm not just saying like me specifically, but if you're like just a random movie going audience member, and you know that the kids always are the more interesting part of the movie, that's just kind of what it feels like to me. But
they sprinkled. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I said they sprinkled in some of the kids in there, which made it a little bit more, I guess, flavorful a little bit, because, you know, the kids are a lot. It showed me like how much I loved the first one so much. I'm just like, oh, it's the kids again. Yay. We get to see them. Did any of you get that feeling?
Not as much, but I get what you're saying. The thing with the kids in this one, I could tell they were older, especially Georgie. I said that earlier on. The kid don't even look the same. And that's where I think they would have been benefited from filming all the kids shit first. Just do the kids shit first while they're the same age. Get it done and over with.
Instead of getting them back 2 years later.
Yeah, that's what when I interviewed the director, that's what he said too. That makes no sense. Why would you do that? He's like,
yeah, kids get older. You have a limited time.
Fast. He's like, yeah, within months you could have a kid be a foot taller. He's like, that's the problem we had. We had to get all that stuff done quick before they got any taller, you know.
Yeah, and they did a good job with that. They looked very consistent throughout the.
Oh yeah, it's because that was all filmed at the same time.
Yeah,
and they split it up for some reason. But you could have ended the first movie, run the story simultaneously, ended the first movie where they split up. Remember in the beginning of about midway through the first movie where they split up. Do that. It's where you end the first movie, and kind of and end it there. And then the second movie be mostly about, you know, them kind of getting back together in as kids and getting together again as adults. And then the third movie be running simultaneously what they did to defeat it as kids and what they need to do differently now. And I think the story would have ran better for people. And because that's kind of the way the story runs in the book. You don't get the two separate parts of it, really.
Right. But that's what I think has been just sort of cemented, excuse me, in people's minds that this is like a 2-part kind of thing when they're kids and when they're adults, and that's it.
The detriment to the story. And I think that's where Tommy Lee Wallace kind of understood too. And he said at the end, if he could redo it, he would change that again, because that's the problem. The moment you split those two stories up, like Mecca said, you wind up with the same story twice.
Yeah,
and it gets boring. And at least this version, they were able to spice it up a little bit better than the second part of the miniseries back in the day. And I do enjoy this part better than I did the first part. I will say that. But the kids are better actors, but they did a great job casting the adults in this version too.
Oh, they did great.
Like across the board, it was really great casting.
Oh yeah, I was very impressed with that. I was not under any illusion that, I mean, I knew it was Bill Hader, but I thought like, oh yeah, that's Richie. Yeah,
they did a great job.
I believe that, and that's all you need.
Well, not only that, they didn't. You can tell these guys really made sure to find people who embodied what they were when they were kids, and you can tell these actors must have paid attention to those kids acting and really tried to get some of the mannerisms, like they did in the first miniseries too, but the same kind of stuff to where to connect those tissues. They did a lot of that good stuff. It was the story again. It was a little off, but the story to me was better in this part than it was the first part.
Yeah, and you mentioned something about how that's the fault in the story is the 2 parts. I think that's completely accurate. And because it's the same story twice, I was thinking in my head while just walking out of the theater, just thinking like that was great and all, but they really could have ended it with that one movie. That could have been it. And if it ever comes back, we'll come back and then have that be that. And I don't know if they just defeated it. But then there would also be that, something is missing. You want to see what happens. Does it come back? Does it ever come back? You don't know. So,
well, yeah, because that's kind of the whole point of the story is they're facing their childhood demons as adults.
Yeah, and that was
kind of a reversal as they're kids. They were forced to grow up early. Now they're
Yeah, but I guess it's just. I don't know. I don't know what it is to me, but you mentioned there being a trilogy, and I'm thinking based on the book, would they have to make up a lot of stuff in order to make the second part more interesting?
No, I think not. If you do it, I mean, I could be wrong. This is just my opinion, but I think if you did it, like I said, if you stop the first movie where they're all split up at when they're kids, I mean, you keep bouncing back and forth between adults and kids.
Mm-hmm.
Keep showing what their lives are like now. Show what their lives were like with their kids, and then when you get to the point where they break up for the summer, in the middle of the summer in the first movie, that's where you cut off that first movie. So there's still that there's another part coming, so you're not worried about it. But you make this whole trilogy work like one big movie, like they did Lord of the Rings, and then that second part picks up, like I said, when you have the story of the kids getting back again together as kids, but you also coincide that with the adults getting back together again in Derry as adults, and then you end that version where they're getting ready to go back and face it, and then the third film be both stories of simultaneously of the kids facing it and the adults facing it, and then this time them figuring out what they have to do differently to destroy the. And I like how they changed the ending a little bit. I like how they make him smaller, make him believe he's smaller, and then we can defeat him. I loved that, how they turned, its own power on itself. I like how they did that little twist there, and they kept making him smaller and smaller until he's insignificant and he can't even stop them from tearing his heart out. I love that. That was just great. I loved that whole bit. I know it's a little different than what's in the book and stuff, but it's still kind of the same kind of idea.
Yeah, I walked out of the theater thinking like, I kind of like that. That was just interesting. It was very literal, very on the nose, but symbolic, and it worked.
Yeah, because I thought that was like it explains a little bit more into the whole depth of what it is, and it's all about fear. It's all about, and it helps you like, well, why can't he kill the kids at the end of the first movie, but he has no problem killing any other kid when he gets close to him? It's because they're strong. It's because they're stronger than him, and that's what they figure out, is that it's actually really weak. And he pretends to be this big, huge thing. And that's like, he's like, I'm the eater of worlds. I'm the eater of worlds. He keeps trying to convince himself that he's this big monster when he's not. He's this little insignificant thing. And that's, I thought that was the cool little bit at the end there that they kind of twisted it into.
Yeah, it's like a character who has an inflated ego, thinks that they're all powerful, thinks that they're entitled to this certain position. They take steps to earn that and earn that reputation, and then when it all falls apart underneath them, it's like they've been living a lie their whole life.
Now, the one line I thought was a little bit too far is they're like, "You're nothing but a big bully," because obviously that's what this whole thing was like, a signification of how, you know, kids can make a bully smaller by not being afraid of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's kind of the whole metaphor there. I liked it. Yeah, the deadlights were done better in this one too, Drew Hughes. I agree with that. They were handled much better in this one. And that's why I wonder why they didn't bring Audra back in, because that's the whole point, is she gets under the deadlight spell and she's stuck in a coma. And in the book, just like in the miniseries, it's Bill riding with her on Silver that saves her, brings her back or whatever. And I don't know why they didn't have that here either, other than just time, I guess. Or just kind of, they do have this thing where they play out the whole Bill, Ben, Beverly triangle a little bit more they do in this one than they did in the miniseries. Maybe that's why. I mean, it's really obvious, but it's like, I guess they played it out just a little too much more in this one. Because I thought for a moment, I'm like, are they going to change it and actually have Bill go with her instead of Ben? Because they had his wife be a bitch. You know what I mean? You know how movies are.
Right. I mean, but I don't expect it to change it that drastically. But then again,
I wasn't sure. And then they had Bowers stab Eddie, and I'm like, oh fuck! I thought that Mike was the one who got stabbed. Well, they then eventually did, but they had it play out differently in the movie than they do in the book. He doesn't end up in the hospital like he does in the book, in the movie, in the miniseries too.
Right. Taking
him out of the equation too. They at least gave him more to do in this movie instead of taking shit away from the black guy like they did in the first movie.
yeah, they did. They really did. And I mean, like, why was he stuck all there the whole time? Why does he have to be the one to get everyone back? Like, you know, well, like, that's all he does in some way. But
well, yeah, they kind of took that away from him a little bit in the first movie, as I explained to Mecca, because he was the one who was the historian in the first movie, or in the book and in the first miniseries, and that's true to form. In this one, they gave that storyline to Ben for some reason. It took Ben's storyline completely away.
Yeah, it changed it drastically. I didn't quite recognize it.
They kind of gave flip-flop stories, because in the original book and in the miniseries, Ben is his father died in the Korean War,
right? And
his mother and him are living with her, I think, sister and brother-in-law.
And they're abusive to him. They make fun of him.
Yeah, they all treat him like shit. But they took all that out, and they basically then they gave Mike he's living with his uncle instead of, just because in the original story, I think he still has his parents and stuff. They gave him that whole backstory with the Bowers fire thing. I don't think that's from the book or anything. I don't remember. If somebody else knows that, please correct me. But I think that was all added for the movies.
Yeah, and it seemed like it seemed kind of odd, because I know that the miniseries was very faithful to the book, wasn't it? It
was. It left a lot of stuff out because they just didn't have time for it.
True.
It just dulled the edge, I guess is the best way to put it.
Well, would this have worked better as one of those, I guess, I hate to use the word miniseries again, but if like Netflix had an entire season dedicated to the story or something, would that have made it better? Would that have been able to include all of that? Do you think like a movie format isn't the best way to do it? Or
yeah, it's one of those things where I agree with you. They would have been better off doing it as a trilogy, and if they weren't going to do that, a Netflix like 10-part miniseries.
Yeah, to be able to include all of it. And yeah.
I agree. I think that would have been the better route in the end. But still, don't get me wrong. It's a good movie. I think you'll enjoy it. You'll definitely get your $10-15 worth, whatever it costs you to go see it in theater. It sounds like you had a good time and you would recommend it. I know Mecca's on the fence, but I'm sure she'll watch it eventually if she gets a chance.
I'll probably see it eventually, but I don't know.
You haven't seen it yet?
No. Oh. Well, I mean, it's Stephen King. It's. I saw the last one, so like nothing really you can spoil so much.
Well, that's what we said in the outside. It's like you kind of
don't like the source material. I think the more I kind of dive into this world, the more I'm like, I just don't like these characters or the world, or because I'm not even a Stephen King fan, really. The more that I kind of look at it,
some people just aren't.
I know, and like, it's like. Yeah, it's like when you tell people, it's like, yeah, I don't really like Evil Dead that much. They're like,
No,
what?
I totally understand that. Some people where Stephen King is a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
It really is. Like my sister enjoys his books. She's currently reading it. God rest her soul. Maybe help. Help.
That's why I've never reread it. It's so fucking thick.
I know, and there's all these details that are in there, and a lot of it is irrelevant to the actual to the plot. But I mean,
but somebody like get to the point, get it done, get it over with. Let me get in and out. I got shit to get done.
Well, and that's the great part about it.
Problem with like a lot of these Stephen King and stuff is like, because if you tell me the same thing over and over again, it's like, as somebody who's seen the miniseries, I don't know, and I didn't really like how they did Pennywise last time. I was like, I don't know if I'm really ever gonna get around to watching this. Like, if I do, it might be 10 years from now, but I'm not gonna make any promises. So
you might enjoy it for the nostalgic 80s horror factor, but again, it's Stephen King is an acquired taste.
Yeah. That's
I totally
thing.
understand.
I really gotta be in the mood for it.
So it's Stephen King in general, not just the book specifically.
Just his storytelling style, just everything. I understand what she's saying. There's certain stories of his that are universal, like Stand By Me and Shawshank Redemption and stuff like that. That just about, but I mean, just about anybody could get into and go, oh, that's Stephen King. I had no idea.
Yeah, I think those are the better ones for me. Is like the less he has to do with them.
Because he has his tropes, and we've made fun of him before in other podcasts where, he definitely has his tropes. And if it's a tropey Stephen King story, I can see certain people who are just now. There's other people who are not into standard horror but love Stephen King.
Yeah, that's the other.
So you have both sides of it. So overall, I say go see the movie if you're on the fence about it. Is that what you think, Proper Jeremy?
I would recommend checking it out for sure. If you like the first one, you're probably gonna like the second one.
Yeah, I mean, most people are saying it's not as good. I thought it was better, but see, I'm like a flip-flop on the miniseries. I liked the first part of the miniseries better. Didn't like the second part as much. This one, I didn't like the first movie as much as the second part. So it's kind of like a weird, thing. So I don't know. Yeah. Overall, it could have been a lot worse. So go see it, folks. Check out Proper Jeremy's channel if you haven't. He just didn't you just cross 1,000 subs here not too long ago?
I did a little bit ago. So yeah, and I ate a Carolina Reaper yesterday, so that's fun. You can go check that out. I'm gonna upload that again. No, I had 2 ghost peppers the first time.
Oh, that was ghost peppers the first time.
Yes, that was rough, but no, this time around, no, just I decided to go all out on the Council of Jeremy's, but I'm going to be releasing that separately. Just as its own clip. The stream was privated, so it's just going to be something that you get to see for fun a little later on, and then the stream will be public again. Should be this week.
If you want to go watch Proper Jeremy get an ulcer, go check that out. But do subscribe to his channel, and if you haven't already, do subscribe to our resident Harpy Mecha Random. Tell him a little bit about yourself.
I heard a doggy.
I know, she's right outside the window.
I'm Mecha Random 42, and I probably hate everything you guys like or something. I don't know.
Well.
Yeah, I got a few videos I gotta get making too today. So, oh god. So much
all right. So we'll let everybody go here, and thanks for joining us in the chat. Do check out their channels, and we'll hope to see you next time.
See you, everyone.
Bye.